From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. If you have a question to ask for good advice to give, come on over to podtherapy.net and join our conversation.
Today on the show, we have a special guest therapist, as you've probably heard, who will help us answer some questions, and we will announce the new president of the Pennsylvania chapter for the Pod Therapy Fan Club.
And now, broadcasting from Level 9 Studios, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's Therapy Thursday, and it's time for some pod therapy.
I love that she still said, I'm Nick Tangeman. Yeah. Yes. I like this version of Nick
well
better.
Done.
Yes. Do you think they believed it, that I'm Nick Tangeman?
I do.
I think most people probably
If I
do.
closed my eyes, I could not tell the difference.
No.
That's scary.
Yes. So, Nick, who is our special guest?
Okay, so our special guest is Whitney Lewis, LCSW,
Yes.
licensed clinical social worker. Here
Professional
in-
identity thief, as we just heard.
Professional
Yep,
identity.
I'm
that's a
a
real
woman
thing.
of many talents.
Yeah. She has stolen your identity, Nick. Open up a credit. Go buy a house.
Yeah, so she is our guest therapist today, so she's going to stick around, answer some questions, and help us out with the show. So this will be exciting. So I guess to get started, we should kind of introduce Whitney to our listeners.
Yeah.
So you are originally from the great state of Texas.
Yes.
What? The
Yep.
stars and stripes are bright at night. Deep in the heart of Texas.
Damn it, I missed it.
Yeah, that's because you're from Iowa and you don't understand us. Which part of Texas are you from?
Dallas area. I grew up in Grand Prairie, Texas.
Oh, very cool, man. I'm from Waxahachie.
Really?
Yeah, man. That's awesome.
That's really cool.
That's really cool. Waxahachie is about the population of this studio.
Yeah.
So 3 people and basically Scott walking around with a camera. That's essentially it. But Waxahachie also has catfish. That's pretty much it.
I didn't know you're from Texas.
I am. Well, kind of. I'm from lots of places. But I lived 2 years in Waxahachie, Texas. Trust me, it counts. Trust me, it counts. It is in Tornado Alley. I have survived some stuff. That's awesome, though. So how long were you in Texas?
I have been in Texas until I went to school. I went to my undergrad and to get my undergrad degree in Ouachita Baptist University in Arkansas.
Cool.
Arkadelphia, Arkansas.
Oh, that's a thing. Arkadelphia?
Arkadelphia.
That
yeah.
feels
Shout
like you're
out.
making that up.
I wish I were.
God, I wish I was better at geography because I really want to call BS. Somebody is listening in Arkansas like, I am not going to stand for this. Arkadelphia is a real thing.
Yep.
And student athlete, right?
I played college soccer. So
Wow. Wow.
Yep.
That's really exciting.
Yep.
I didn't. I was a mathlete.
Hey, that counts.
Except not good at math.
So Whitney, what? So you finished school. What
Yep.
got you interested in being a therapist?
Well, I actually have a piece of paper from when I was 12 years old that I filled out in school. And it asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I put psychiatrist.
Nice. Really?
Not
Nice.
really knowing the difference at the time.
I still don't know the difference.
You know, yeah, who knows? Not really knowing the difference between psychiatrist, psychologist, social worker. So,
Okay.
Therapist. So at that young of an age, what made you like that idea?
my younger brother he was ADHD, still is, I guess, still ADHD.
Sure.
And he saw a lot of professionals. And so just experiencing that really, I don't know, sparked an interest, obviously.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah,
Is there
that's awesome.
a population in your professional work that you've tended to focus on?
Yes, I have, since my clinical internship here in Las Vegas, I've been mainly focused on working with juveniles who sexually offend. So they've been adjudicated or found guilty for some sort of sexual offense, and they are ordered by the judge to complete treatment in order to stay off a sex offender registry as an adult. And we work through that with them and what led them to their sexual acting out.
So not to dig too deep into their profile, but I think the listener probably doesn't always understand, and I know that a lot of folks, when they hear sex offender, a whole lot of stereotypes jump into their mind, but it's important, I think, to humanize that population. Explain, these are kids. These
Absolutely.
are kids who are struggling. Is there a pattern that you notice in their personal history, maybe some trauma background or anything that just shows up an awful lot?
Absolutely. So a lot of adolescents who sexually offend have been sexually abused themselves. You can see that through when they open up to you, if you can get them to open up to you.
Sure. Trust is probably hard to earn.
Yes. Adolescents have a hard time opening up to adults and trusting adults. So yeah, they have usually have a history of themselves being sexually abused, and at times they may act out what was done to them.
Yes, and that's a big, huge misunderstanding. People don't understand that a lot of times people who become offenders have been offended themselves. They've often been the victim of a crime.
Absolutely, yeah.
One of the things too that is kind of interesting with that is that that's a population that I hear a lot of times people will say, I'll never work with sex offenders.
Right.
I remember when I was in college and we were talking about that, because one thing that's interesting about when you go to school for therapy or counseling or something like that, everybody is all in school together. But then once you graduate and you find jobs, everybody kind of spreads out.
Scatters.
And you could be doing geriatric work.
Right.
You could be doing working with adolescents.
Substance
like
abuse.
me, substance abuse.
Right.
And you kind of scatter. There's so many different areas.
Yeah.
But I remember in graduate school, some folks talking about like populations that they absolutely won't work with.
Yeah.
And that was a big one, which for me is kind of frustrating because if you're getting into the field and you're saying right off the bat, I will not work with these people, you're really shutting yourself out. Like you could have something great to offer that population, but right off the bat, you're now saying you're not going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be problematic for sure.
Yeah. Were there any, are there any kind of stereotypes or things that you hear? Like when you tell people that you work with juvenile sex offenders and you do therapy with that, what kind of reaction do you usually get?
The initial reaction, if it's not another therapist I'm talking to,
Right.
is shock usually.
Yeah.
And the next question is usually, how do you work with those people or that type of population? And to me, I think it was challenging at first, but I got into it and chose to pursue that avenue based on my own personal belief that if I'm not putting myself in uncomfortable situations or challenging situations, then I'm not really going to grow as a person or a therapist. And so for me, it was, if I can work with adolescent males who have acted out sexually and talk to them about their sexual fantasies, their sexual behaviors, how they view people they are attracted to. If I can do that, then I can work with any population.
Very true. I think it's very true. And, you know, to Nick's point, whenever he said when we were all in our grad schools and working on these things, it was very common for people to say, you know, I'm going to do this or I'm not going to do that. And then you get out and you scatter. And, you know, it's neat to see people specialize, though, in a discipline. Like you specialize in juvenile sex offenders. Nick specializes in substance abuse addiction. I specialize in equine therapy, counseling the horses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Insurance not paying well for this.
They should.
It's really getting ridiculous.
They should pay for that.
Yeah. If you want these horses to perform in the race, send them to my office.
Okay.
I'll be the whisperer and very generous hour.
I don't know. Sounds like a scam.
Oh, no, it's a scam. No, please don't misunderstand. Entirely a scam.
Yeah.
Come on down to therapy.vegas. Book Jim today.
But one thing that you said that was really kind of a really good point was that, and I've heard this from other people who work in that field that say that there's kind of this shock factor when you first get into it. Because actually, my very first internship that I ever did was in my bachelor's in psychology, and it was working with juvenile sex offenders.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it was interesting because like the very first week, I was like just white face, jaw on floor. Like I was like, oh my god, like what have I gotten myself into?
Very uncomfortable the first week.
But then after being in there for a year, then new kids come in and they're like, they're hesitant, they don't want to open up and they don't want to talk, and you kind of want to say, you don't, but you kind of want to say to them like, look, there's nothing at this point that you're going to tell me that I haven't heard.
I have said that so many times. I've heard it all.
Right.
No reason to be ashamed. I've heard it all.
And once you get through that, I agree. I think you should push yourself as a therapist. You should work. You shouldn't. It's good to be aware of what everybody's soft spots are.
Right.
So I know that some people that I went to graduate school with were, they've been through certain things themselves, and they said, I can't deal with perpetrators of domestic abuse because I was a victim myself.
I've lived through it.
And like that makes sense to me. But for the most part, I think it's good to push yourself outside your comfort zone and work with populations that you find yourself uncomfortable with, because you're right. Whitney's absolutely right. Once you've done that, then it's like, I feel really
what's
good.
neat in both of your backgrounds about that population is you explored that during your internship.
Yes.
And a lot of our listeners are actually aspiring therapists. They're people that are enrolling in college programs or graduating them or navigating them.
Yeah.
And for all you folks out there that are interested, your internship is really that time of self-discovery. And you're really supposed to get out there and encounter new populations, encounter different kinds of supervisors, and be challenged. Otherwise, you never know what you don't know. But when you meet these kids, you hear sex offender, you go, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can do this. But they're just kids. They just want to play Mario, and they just want to go play tag. And they're just kids. And they're almost always kids that have been hurt.
Yes.
They're victims more than anything.
Yes.
And they're acting out that victimization in a direction because they don't know what else to do with it.
Absolutely.
And I know perfectly, successful 45-year-olds who wouldn't know what to do if they were the victim of something.
Yep.
They probably would re-traumatize and act it out too.
Yeah.
So, there's a saying that we use in therapy a lot, which is that hurting people hurt people. And that's very common. So if you've ever met a kid out there, folks, or anybody who, has acted in ways that are sort of scary or inexplicable, always assume that there's some pain in their history, and approach with some generosity of spirit, I think, is a huge takeaway.
Yes, that is exactly what I would reinforce as well.
Yeah, and if there's a horse in your life that needs therapy,
send him to Jim.
Come on down. I would love to have that as a guest. So, Mr. Ed, tell us.
I don't know. The way this podcast goes, we're not going to rule that out.
We should start claiming that there was a horse in the room during all episodes.
So, I'm sure you've had some success stories.
Yeah, definitely. The challenge I have is that once they complete therapy with me, they don't usually want to come back and see me.
Because they were court ordered?
Yeah, they were court ordered. They've talked about very personal things. Sometimes I use that as a tool to get them to open up that I am essentially a stranger to them. I have no reason to judge them, and you never have to see me again to relive the things you've shared with me. So I think sometimes that's valuable to them.
Yeah, right.
I guess some clients do come back and stop by to say hi from the group home I worked in, but generally they would rather leave it in the past. They're trying to move forward. So
what is the success rate when you think about kids that go into care? They go through this therapeutic experience. They're committed to the work. They're adequately supported. Is the prognosis good, or are they almost always going to still find trouble?
I think the prognosis is good. There is a lower rate of recidivism or of it happening again if the client or if the perpetrator has been through treatment and completed the process of thinking through why they did what they did and how they can gain tools to help them manage their behaviors and their thoughts in the future.
Yeah, and that's one thing actually that I found really interesting, because I've looked at some of the data and some of the statistics, and as an addictions professional, I wish we had those results.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting, because I think a lot of people, when they think of sex offenders, they think, oh, they're always going to be like that.
Yes.
Right.
There's no recovery for them. They may as well just write them off. They're no good.
Yes.
But as an addictions professional, I'm like, no, like that's like, I wish I could produce results. Like
Yes.
sex offender therapy can produce results.
Gosh. And if I can get on my soapbox for a second, since we're on this topic, one of the things that publicly has kind of bothered me, and I'm like this with everything, if you're, using stereotypes to talk about people that live with addiction, I'm going to have a problem with that, and if we're talking about it in a non-generous way and we're using medical language, like addict or, somebody that's addicted to heroin or something like that, and we're not treating them in a medical capacity and we're just criminalizing them. I have a real problem with that. And I've honestly had a big beef with this concept of sex offense, right? Because there's sex addiction, sex offense. And there's a lot of folks in the media recently who, especially with the Me Too movement, which has really highlighted a lot of unspoken stuff.
Yes.
But I think that the part of the conversation that's often missing is our field of psychology. And how do we view these people? Do we see this person as somebody who obsessively and compulsively behaves in ways that are unhelpful despite the negative consequences in their life? And if that's the case, do we firstly believe that the justice system is what's going to correct that? Or do we think that maybe the justice system in concert with somebody like Whitney and a gifted therapist who really approaches this from a human side and says, hey, can we analyze where this behavior started? What's going through your mind? Do you desire to hurt people, or are you living out some pain in your own life? But I think that the scandal of the word sex, as soon as the public hears that, they go, ooh, they're a monster.
Yes.
And it's like, wow, guys, it's really easy to label somebody for something that your parents definitely did. But as soon as we talk about sex, it's like, wow, this is not okay. And now I'm going to have to mark this podcast as explicit.
Yeah.
And more people will listen because I did. But I mean, Whitney, speak to that. This misconception that's out there. As soon as anybody uses the word sex, everybody cringes. Even our colleagues can sometimes really just bat an eye at this and go, whoa, that's absurd. That's different psychology. Those are the monsters. And they're so human, though, once they get in your office.
They are. They really are what I call normal teenagers. When I talk to people, the ones who I mentioned before ask me, how can you work with that population? They're normal teenagers. They go to regular public high school. They deal with similar issues, that every teen deals with. And they're normal. Yeah. And I don't think people assume that. They assume, there's some creeper or monster or something. And it's not. You would never know them if you saw them on the street.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Good point.
Yeah, very good point. And yes, there is a taboo surrounding the word sex and anything attached to it, which is unfortunate. And I'm hoping with the Me Too movement that it will at least bring light to the subject enough that we can talk about it as a society.
Right.
Especially for young people, because another important thing I'd like to mention is that these teens usually leave my office saying, I wish that I could have had meetings with you like this or worked through this workbook before, and I would have been able to talk to someone about my sexual thoughts or feelings or known what to expect. I don't really know how to
But it's so taboo, and that's something, gosh, I hope the whole listener crowd just heard what Whitney said. This is one of the things that really bothers me. And again, I'm climbing back up on my soapbox. But if we were talking about drug offenders, everybody would assume that they're a drug addict first and that they offend in this way, in these illegal capacities, because of some malfunctioning going on in their psychology, right? But when we talk about sex offenders, nobody thinks sex addict, nobody thinks sexually traumatized, nobody thinks sex victim. We just think weirdo monster. And guys, it's time to get past that. But what bothers me too is, like, in the Me Too movement, we'll highlight somebody like Harvey Weinstein, who is a guy who's extremely problematic and has some serious issues, and many of them are legal, and he needs to face the full scope of justice. And I'd be saying that if he was a heroin addict. But as soon as he said, I might be a sex addict, I need to go get treatment, everybody said, oh, what a cop-out. And as a psychology professional, I was like, no, he's admitting that he probably does have this problem, and he's 100% responsible for the consequences of that disease.
Right. Doesn't eliminate.
Doesn't absolve you. But people are very unsatisfied with that. Because if you say sex addict, they're like, oh, sure, I'll bet you are. And it's like, no, that's a real thing, guys. We will diagnose that. Like, we will acknowledge this is real, and we will treat it. But, it's something that the public consciousness isn't quite ready for.
Yeah.
So, Whitney, what advice do you have, or how can parents or anybody who's going through this, are there any resources or any advice that you can give them?
Definitely for parents, I would say it can be intimidating to talk to your teen about any sexual behaviors that you find concerning. I highly recommend being involved in their social media accounts and seeing what they are looking up on the internet. Pornography is available to them nearly 24 hours a day on their cell phones or their friends' cell phones. And to just be aware and keep an ongoing open conversation with your teen about sex is so important, even though I totally get it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But that is a common thread in the families that I work with. The parents do not want to talk about it or have not in the past. And it's a real breakthrough in our family sessions to be able to allow them space to open up, and their child can then feel more comfortable talking to them outside of the session.
And then educational resources or a direction they could go in to learn more?
So there is in Nevada, there's a Nevada chapter for the Association for the Treatment of Sexual Abusers, which spells ATSA. We call it ATSA.
Okay.
Anyone is allowed to be a member. I highly recommend going to their website and seeing the resources they have to offer. They send out a monthly book, I guess, that includes studies about adults and adolescents who sexually act out. And it is also a great resource for therapists out there who are looking to learn more about this population and maybe humanize it a little bit more. So
awesome. Gosh, it is so awesome to have you, Whitney. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you able to stick around and answer some of our listener mail and give some folks some advice?
I guess I can stick around see
now,
how helpful I can be.
She's saying that because Nick just walked to the door and locked it. So she just realized how deep she is into this. The only way out is through at this point.
Exactly.
What's the safe word?
Yeah, that's right. Oh, sex therapists. They're the most fun of all of us.
Too comfortable.
Well, awesome, man. That's so exciting to have you. And thank you for sticking around. So we'll dive into some listener mail.
Okay. First one writes in, my friend is getting back with an ex who cheated on him. How can I be a good friend?
Yeesh.
Yeah. Hello. Last week, my good friend told me that he and his ex are getting back together after having been broken up for about a year. I never had any problems with her when they were together, and I got along with her really well. However, when they broke up, I learned that she had cheated on him many times. I felt devastated for my friend and have grown to dislike her. When consoling him, I expressed my dislike for her and tried to support him by saying that he's good to be rid of her, etc. Now that they're getting back together, I'm worried about, number one, how this will affect our friendship after I've said so many terrible things about her, and two, how do I overcome my dislike for her in order to be supportive of my friend?
Gosh, I have heard reiterations of this question so many times in life. I mean, the cheating factor is unique.
Oh, I've done this.
Yeah, right?
I've had a friend this same thing happen to, and then...
I feel like his first thing about how, well, I've said terrible things, you know what? That makes you a good friend. Like, if your friend has his heart broken by somebody, I hope you trash talk her. That's therapeutic. Like, that's cathartic. But then it's like, oops, I've kind of said things that you cannot takesies backsies.
Yeah, it definitely makes things awkward. Yeah, they get back together.
Well, Nick and I have worked together, and then when he leaves, I talk all this trash, and then we work together
when
at a
I
new
leave.
place. Well, yes, you've left twice at two different places.
No, I'm saying you talk trash while I'm there.
While you're there. Yeah, but see, the consistency is what helps, is because nothing I've said is new to him. What was your impression of that?
I think it's challenging with relationships, friendships, and their romantic relationships. I believe what I've personally learned is that if you have a problem with your friend's partner, you're better off just not really saying anything after the fact. So, yes, once they found out she had cheated, I totally get, trash talking away to support your friend. After the fact, though, if his friend decides to get back with this girl, I believe you support your friends still, kind of like you said before.
Yeah. Honestly, that's kind of where I was going with it, too. I was kind of thinking, at this point, you just kind of have to bite the bullet and just be quiet about it. What has been said has been said. There's no sense. I don't think discussing it is going to make the situation any better. I think you just kind of have to go with it, continue to be supportive, and let things unfold.
So my advice is this. I'm going to give you the same advice that I give to every politician I've ever met. Pivot. Pivot and deny. Just pretend like you never said those things. Even though there's tape of it. Even though there's a video of you. Even though people overheard everything you said to that guy on that bus. Just ignore it. Just pretend like you didn't say it. Deny that the tape is real. No, but for real, honestly, what Nick said is accurate. What has been said has already been said. Your friend knows exactly what you thought at that time. However, you're able to take the position of, you're my friend and your happiness is what matters to me. If presently you are happy in this relationship, then presently I am supportive of it. When this relationship causes you to be unhappy or in pain, as your friend, I am presently unhappy with your relationship, and at that point, I will probably echo the things that you say. So I think if you can take a present mindset and give yourself permission to be authentically in the here and now, there is no conflict. You can just allow it to be something that's true today that wasn't true yesterday.
Right. And I think for the second question, which is how do I overcome my dislike for her?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if they're friends, there's going to be some couples get-togethers or things like that. And right. I think at that point, my advice would be just to try to look at where she's at now. Try to look at something positive. Try to focus on the good things about this individual. And I mean, it's just like any friend that you have conflict with. You're going to have to get over. You're going to have to resolve.
Yeah.
I did think, too, maybe him talking to his friend and asking him what made you want to get back together with her. Maybe that would help him view her differently, like Nick was saying.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
as long as your approach is curious and not condescending.
Yeah. Yes.
Because if you're like, so, why did you buckle? Yeah. What's going on with your spine? Is it missing? You know, because apparently you have no self-worth, Nick. You know, sorry, that really got dark fast.
I really don't like her. Help me understand you like
That's
about
condescending.
Her. That's condescending.
Yeah. But I think Whitney's right. If you can approach sincerely and curiously and say, hey, you know, I thought that you were definitely not going back, but obviously something changed, man, and I respect you. You're a sane person. I trust your judgment. So tell me, teach me what happened. But the other thing is this, you know, always give people the ability to change. And I think as three therapists sitting in a room, we would not be in business much longer if we didn't believe that people could change. And so they definitely can. And this person could be in the midst of a transition where they regret what they've done and they want to turn over a new leaf. That's always possible.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And be careful not to be waiting in the wings to say, I told you so. And if it doesn't work out, please decline to say that. That is not good for your friendship. Just be present and supportive and just go through the waves of pain with them, even if you saw it coming, and then refer them to therapy.
Yes.
We'll help put them back together again. Great question. Thank you for writing in.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Nick, our next question is titled, I did something wrong, I apologized, and my roommate still won't talk to me. My roommate overheard me call her mean. I don't normally say things if I don't mean it, and I do truly believe she is mean. However, I acknowledge that it was wrong to talk about her behind her back. I wanted to apologize as soon as I could. Unfortunately, the next time I saw her, she decided to completely ignore my existence. I managed to talk to her a day later because there were other people around, so she couldn't ignore me without calling attention to it. I apologized, and I asked if she was okay. She told me it was fine, but her feelings were hurt. This was about 3 days ago. I don't see her much now, but when I do, I try my best to smile and say hi to her. She still ignores me. Today, I walked out to go open the front door. She was sitting there and didn't acknowledge me when she normally would. I opened the door to let my boyfriend in, and she greets him as soon as he walks in. Being friendly, of course, he greets her as well. Her ignoring me doesn't bother me at all. The only thing that really bothers me is when she acknowledges my boyfriend in front of my face, because it's obviously a mechanism to make me feel angry. Am I right to be upset that she'll acknowledge my boyfriend in front of my face? Is my boyfriend right for not wanting to stop saying hello? It's not like either of us are friends with her, but I feel if he stops replying to her, it'll stop her from feeling like she has power over me, and I'll stop blistering whenever I think about her. But more importantly, what is the most mature route to take? Well, guys, as the least mature person in this room, I am definitely going to resign myself and hand it off.
Good move.
Yeah. Nick, first impression on that one. What are you thinking?
Well, my first impression on this, honestly, is I think there's some stuff that the writer is going to have to get over.
Yeah.
You know, some things are just... I guess the big thing I always like to ask people, my favorite piece of advice, and it's actually in the form of a question, is I like to ask my clients, is this the hill you're prepared to die on?
Right.
Is this the thing that you feel like this is so important to me that it is worth jeopardizing my relationship with my friend because she says hi to my boyfriend first?
Right.
If it is, fine, pursue it. If not, then maybe this is something that you just kind of need to let go and pick your battles. But the thing that I like about this question is that this addresses a big issue that a lot of people have, which is I've apologized, they haven't accepted it, and they keep bringing it up. In my line of work, working with addicts and alcoholics, this happens all the time because my clients are constantly apologizing for things that they did while under the influence, but the family will not accept it.
Wow.
So it continues to come up again and again. And the biggest thing that I've noticed that's missing is validation. So as an example, I had one client, he was 18 years old, came into our residential facility, and when he was actively using, he had stolen his mom's ring and pawned it for drug money.
Wow.
Now, this ring belonged to his mother, who she got it from her grandmother, who got it from her mother, who got it from her mother.
Oh, no.
So this, so this ring went back like 5 generations.
Oh, no.
Okay. And so I remember because we were in family group and he brought this up and he said, he's like, I've apologized for this multiple times. I don't know why you continue to bring it up. But what is missing is validation.
Yeah.
He says he's sorry, but he's not validating.
Yes.
And so to the listener, what I'm talking about with validation is being able to connect with emotionally what that person went through.
Yeah.
That's missing.
Yeah.
Right. So I went to this training once, and it was I forget the guy who did the training. I was going to look it up, but my phone just decided to update right when I was about to say it.
Was it me? Did I do the training?
It was not.
Oh.
It was not you.
Okay.
It was somebody who was really...
So it was a good training.
Yeah.
Got it.
So, no, it was Green Porch Swing Productions was the name of this guy's production company, but I can't remember the guy who did it.
Okay.
But anyway, he came up with a method of apologizing. He said there's 4 steps to apologizing. How to apologize with meaning. 4 steps to it. The first one, be specific. So you have to say what you did that you're apologizing for.
Yeah.
So many people just want to say, hey, sorry.
Yeah, my bad.
Yeah.
No. I hit your car with my car.
Yes.
I acknowledge.
I acknowledge that.
I did this.
Second thing you need to do is validate how the other person would be feeling.
Yeah.
So in the sense, like if I said, yesterday at work, Jim, I yelled at you when you came into my office. I'm sorry about that.
So you stated the specific.
Yeah.
I yelled at you when you
Number
came
one.
in the office.
Number 2, if I were in your position, I would have felt very humiliated and embarrassed.
And shocked.
Okay, so that's the validation. So what I'm doing is I'm letting that person know that I'm at least making an attempt to see things from your perspective and to let you know, hey, you're right to feel that way.
Okay.
If I were in that position, that's probably how I'd feel too. Then 3 is I need to make a plan for what I'm going to do different. So in the future, when you come into my office, even if I'm upset, I want to address you with respect.
Okay.
And then the 4th part is please hold me accountable to that.
If I don't do that,
I want you
to let me know.
I want you to let me know.
Wow. Okay, so in this scenario, we have this person saying, hey, I screwed up, right? I screwed this up. My roommate caught me. Now we're bumbling around. But I hear you saying, Nick, really authentically apologize. It's not enough to just walk over and go, hey, I know you overheard me. This is me saying I'm sorry officially on the record since you wouldn't let me say it before, so I'm doing this in front of witnesses. Right. Like, that's very litigious of me. But I hear you saying, pull that person aside privately and say, hey, I acknowledge that I specifically was talking trash about you on the phone when you walked in. I'll bet you felt embarrassed. I'll bet you felt like you couldn't trust me. I'll bet you questioned our friendship and our relationship and wondered where I really stand. And you know what? In the future, I'm going to make sure I don't do that. I was frustrated with you that day. I was venting, but that was inappropriate. You deserve more respect than that. In the future, if I'm frustrated with you, I'm going to try to come to you directly and tell you in a friendly way. If you catch me not doing that, I want you to hold me accountable. You have permission to call me out and say, hey, do we need to clear the air on this issue?
Right.
Wow, I love that. That's awesome. Very nice.
Yep.
I agree. That's really good advice. My number one question when I was listening to you read the question was, how did you apologize? So that really touches on that.
Yeah. And the line in here about I waited until there was other people around.
Right.
It was like, I don't know if that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, I wanted there to be witnesses.
Yeah.
You just squirm out of it.
I'm also a big fan of airing things out, like Jim mentioned. Find a time if you still feel like things are tense or awkward in different moments. Find a time with her to say, hey, I really want to talk to you and figure out what we can do to improve this relationship, if that's what you want.
Yeah. The only thing I would add to this is great stuff. And guys, the only thing I would add to that is I think that there's this human quality that I've noticed that a lot of us possess, which is when you're wrong, I want this on the record and I want to remember this. And this gets to be a stain on your resume that I get to refer back to and I'm never going to forget. When I'm wrong, get over it.
Yeah.
Don't judge me, okay? And in fact, you know what? You've taken it too far. I screwed up. The audience can't see that I'm pointing at both of you right now with this very stern finger.
Oh, no.
This is getting really weird. Nick?
I'm
we got
sorry, I
stuff to
wasn't
talk
listening.
about. But no, it's a good point. Like whenever, when I screw up or whenever we screw up, we tend to very quickly get over it. And it just seems so small. Why are you making it such a big deal? But guys, don't be dismissive of your own failure. Own it. And I think the art of apology is this thing that we don't pay enough attention to. If you can get good at authentically, meaningfully, personally apologizing for things, owning it without being a martyr, taking responsibility, and not being afraid to make amends, and to try to proactively seek to rebuild that bridge and make it clear that you were in the wrong, and also give the other person permission to resent you. It is entirely okay for you to be found guilty as charged and for that person to say, I'm sorry, but this does change the context of our relationship. Okay, I have to make peace with that. I have to also surrender my right to seek revenge on that. Because I kind of hear her saying, well, I wish my boyfriend would kind of, make her feel uncomfortable too, and I'm looking for an opportunity.
Okay, that was the other thing I was going to bring up too.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's not fair to bring him into this.
Yeah, don't tag him in.
Absolutely.
No.
He is a neutral party. That's has nothing to do with him.
His relationship to your roommate should have nothing to do
Yes.
with your relationship to your roommate. If it does, you're going to find that she suddenly asserts her landlordship and says, you know what? I don't like that guy. He makes me feel uncomfortable. Don't bring him in my house.
Yeah.
So if you would like to keep the peace, keep the peace. But another last points on this, she had pointed out, we're not even friends, my roommate and I. We're just roommates. Okay, so the context of this is a business relationship, mutually beneficial residency. So there needs to be boundaries around that. Nick and I have a business relationship. It would be inappropriate for me to talk trash about him because that would be an obstacle to our professional work, right? So I can see this. If you want to keep this as a professional or business relationship mutually beneficial, then you need to approach it that way. And they have the right to say, you know what? I distrust you as my colleague or I distrust you as my fellow roommate. Make sure the rent's in on time and I'll stay out of your way and you stay out of mine.
Right.
And be prepared to accept that with grace and to understand that you've screwed up and take your lumps.
Yeah.
That would be the most mature thing. Now, if you're looking for the least mature thing, I'm going with whoopee cushion. I just feel like go right for it, right in a public area.
That
just
could
slip
help.
that underneath there, laugh, get it on video, send it to their grandma, that kind of thing.
There you go.
Jim's advice.
Make sure when you tag this podcast that you tag that piece of advice so we can just say, forget everything else. Just go to
straight to this.
Just go to 43 minutes and
this is where you want to grab that. Yeah, excellent point.
All right. Well, thank you very much for writing in. We definitely appreciate it.
Yes.
All right. And now it has come to that point in the show where we get to announce
the moment we've all been waiting for.
The new president of the Pennsylvania chapter
Cue
of the
drum
Pod
roll.
Therapy Fan Club.
Cue drum roll now.
No one.
Nobody.
Yeah, because no one tweeted to us from Pennsylvania this week, so no one claimed the throne.
That is humiliating.
Yeah, it's chaos in Pennsylvania. They're running around leaderless.
I don't think they have internet though, Nick. That's probably what it is.
But they listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
No, we know they have internet because we plugged visitpa.com.
That's true.
All week
That's
last
true.
week.
Maybe all of our listeners are Amish and they're smuggling our podcasts and they're too afraid to announce that they have internet on Twitter because that would ruin it.
Let's go with that.
It's a good theory.
I need this to be
here's-
true for my own self-esteem.
So here's what we're going to do.
Okay.
Here's my plan.
Here's your plan.
I've not confirmed this with Jim. This is just my idea.
Just shoot it out there.
We are now going to open this up to everybody.
Oh my gosh.
So
anybody
starting now,
can be president of the Pennsylvania Fan Club.
Yes, you no longer have to be in Pennsylvania. So
You deserve this,
the president of the
Pennsylvania.
fan club.
You deserve this. You have done this to yourselves.
So next person to tweet to us, you are now the head of the Pennsylvania chapter of Pod Therapy.
Nick, I am checking my phone, And we have our tweet.
It is.
It's from Whitney.
All right.
Who's sitting right next to us. Congratulations, Pennsylvania.
When do I get inducted?
Whitney, professional therapist and guest of Pod Therapy, Whitney Lewis, is now the president of the Pennsylvania Fan Club.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gracious leader. Congratulations. Do to them what you like.
That's how you get stuff done.
That's how you get it done. You assign lordship. All right, that's all the time that we've got for this week's session. Thank you to those who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, Pod Therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by sharing this episode. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/podtherapy or on Twitter at podtherapyguys.
Do you want to add your own advice to today's questions? Post your thoughts at podtherapy.net and join the conversation. I'm Nick Tangeman.
I'm Jim Jobin.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.